So last week, we went over the external anatomy of the insect. Now we're going to move internally and look at the major bodily systems that allow the insect to live and to grow. So let's look at the internal anatomy and the physiology of insects in general. So there are 6 major systems that make up the full internal anatomy of the insect. They are the respiratory system, which allows for oxygen exchange, the circulatory system, which moves nutrients around the body cavity, the digestive system, which liberates nutrients from food through digestion, the nervous system, which can monitor all those internal and external environments and will help integrate that input and tell the body what to do, and the endocrine system, which will regulate the bodily processes. Now, we're going to look at these one at a time, a little bit in depth on each one, and then you'll have this overall view of the internal anatomy of the insect. Now, let me start out first by showing you exactly where all these different systems sit when you look at the inside of the grasshopper. So remember back a couple of weeks ago, I talked very briefly about the internal systems of an arthropod. Remember this? I'm going to be reviewing some of those systems today with a little bit more detail and have it specifically for insects. The insect exoskeleton, if you remember, is a hollow tube, right? It gives the space for these internal organs to be suspended. So this body cavity, if you remember, is known as the hemocyl, and it is filled with the hemolymph, or the insect blood. The hemocyl contains all of the internal organs, from the heart and the brain to the organs of the digestive system, the reproductive system, the nervous, and the respiratory systems. So all of them are just sort of floating in there. The hemolymph, or the bug blood, combines functions of the vertebrate blood and lymph. So if you remember back to your basic human anatomy, all of those things that your blood does, the insect blood can do the same basic things. It'll bathe the organs in all of this fluid, it'll deliver these nutrients, it'll remove metabolites, and it has these immunofunctions that will protect the insect from diseases and parasites. And remember, all of these examples I'm going to be showing you using the grasshopper, because that is that ancient form of insect. Now, let's start with the respiratory system and look at these systems one at a time. So this should be a little bit of a review because I did talk about some of the major portions of the respiratory system during the basics of insect and arthropod anatomy. So oxygen is provided to the tissues via this respiratory system. Insects need to obtain oxygen from the environment, and they need to eliminate carbon dioxide from their cells. To do this, atmospheric air will enter through the exoskeleton via these spiracular openings. Remember, this is what a spherical looks like. You've got this line down the center, just a big hole in the exoskeleton. Those will open and close to allow atmospheric oxygen to enter. So these sphericals will open up into a network of tubes that we call the trachea. These tubes branch throughout the body, and the branches get smaller and smaller, turning from trachea into tracheoles. The tracheoles are less than 1 micrometer in diameter, so they're very, very tiny. They have this branching ability. The finest branches of the tracheoles contact all internal organs and tissues. These tissues that need a lot of oxygen are going to have many, many more tracheoles attaching to them than those that don't need nearly as much. So the oxygen requirements of different tissues dictate the number of tracheoles that are attaching to those tissues. The tracheoles are filled with fluid, with hemolymph. This will allow oxygen to diffuse further and go to the right place so that they can take the oxygen exactly where it's needed within the insect body. Now, the gas exchange, this oxygen and CO2 exchange, occurs through the walls of the tracheoles where they contact these tissues. The tracheoles provide a very large surface area for this gas exchange to happen, which makes it very efficient. Some trachea do not connect to tracheoles, however. So most of them do, but some do not. Instead, they end in these tracheal dilations of just variable size. These will show up in different sizes, different numbers, different shapes, and in different distributions throughout the insect body. They're commonly known as air sacs. And mainly we see them in insects that need to fly, so those insects with wings. So these tracheal dilations make these large air sacs throughout the insect body. What this does is they will increase the volume of the inspired and expired air. So as air comes in and out, you get more volume when you have these big old air sacs inside. They also serve to lower the specific gravity of an insect, which will help it fly. So it'll aid in its ability to fly. Finally, they will provide extra space for the organs to grow. So they basically take up all this space, and then as the organs inside get bigger, they can move out of the way and allow the organs to grow within this hemocyl. They also will help in heat conservation. So they will help with insulating the internal organs of the insect and keeping heat inside. Remember, one of the big problems with having this very high surface to volume ratio is heat retention is very difficult. You lose a lot of heat through that surface area. So these air sacs can create heat pockets or insulated pockets inside the insect.
Our study of insect internal structure and function will start with the respiratory system. The role of animal respiratory systems is to carry oxygen to the body's cells for oxidative metabolism. In insects, spiracles open to the atmosphere and attach to a network of silvery white tubes called trachea. Air containing oxygen enters the spiracles and the oxygen diffuses along the tracheal tubes to the cells. Unlike vertebrate animals, insect blood does not have hemoglobin and does not carry oxygen. Since fine trachea extend to all the body cells, they also serve as a connective tissue that holds the internal tissues together.
All right, so that was a very quick introduction to the basics of internal anatomy and a look at the respiratory system. Up next, we're going to start looking at two more systems. Talk to you soon.